What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So now that the Nintendo Direct is in the rearview mirror, people are looking forward to the next potential event, that coinciding with Pokemon Day, as their expectations there'd be some sort of Pokemon Presents or Pokemon Direct. Well, now, based on their website, it appears one title that could be revealed there has leaked out a bit early, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the ballooning video game budgets that are getting out there, with one in particular for a very contentious title last year, absolutely shocking the internet. And we'll also be going over some of the video game sales, specifically sales in Japan, as it appears PlayStation has really found its footing. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps that a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with E3, specifically one company that appears set to be there, and that's Ubisoft. We can see this posted up by VGC, where they say, speaking during an earnings call on Thursday, the company's CEO, Guillermo, said, if E3 happens, we will be there, and we will have a lot of things to show. Kind of strange, he said, if E3 happens, as later on in the day, Popri did come out and say, yeah, it's happening, and it sounds like they're going to be talking about companies that will be attending their showcase and their big event trade show in June. So it seems like Ubisoft is going, and I do wonder what they're going to show there. My immediate reaction and thoughts are, okay, they're going to have Assassin's Creed there in force, as it appeared that a lot of the stuff outside of Skull and Bones still kind of far off. I mean, they basically rebooted from what we've heard with Prince of Persia. Seems like they were hiring people to do the Splinter Cell remake, and I know they have a ton of live service games and other things that are in the works now, but we'll see what Ubisoft has. If anything, it sounds like Assassin's Creed could at least impress some people there, so we'll see. Also, we did talk about Sonic Frontiers and how it seemed that SEGA was pretty happy with the sales and in some cases exceeded their expectations. Well, now they're talking with investors through some of the slides and different reports that they have presented, one of which did talk a bit about their plans for what's after Sonic Frontiers and their big 3D Sonic game. We'll take a look at this. This was posted up over on Twitter from Tails channel, and they say, we'll strive to ensure solid quality in the development of major titles from our existing franchises. However, development labor costs will rise due to the impact of the global external environment, and we expect this trend to continue for the foreseeable future. Since it is necessary to take on these challenges for major titles, we are proceeding with a bigger budget, even from the basic research stage. All right, so this is great news, obviously, for fans of Sonic and also Sonic Frontiers. Is rather than pulling back, they're going to put more money in order to create the next big Sonic game. And I think they have a good foundation with Sonic Frontiers. There's a lot they can build on. A lot they can build on there, especially to work out things as basic as pop-in. But I think the idea of having the open zone concept and just building on top of that foundation could most likely get them to a position where 3D Sonic is actually viewed as a critical success and not necessarily just, okay, the Sonic game comes out, it sells well, and we're going to continue selling, as they say, through DLC releases and discounts. No, it comes out, and it's just a really good game, and oh yeah, it's also there for Sonic. Oh, and if you were curious about Like a Dragon Ishin, as that is coming up here pretty soon, it appears a demo just dropped online, which you can see this posted up over on Twitter. It says you can dive right into the action with Like a Dragon Ishin. It's a combat demo. It's out now, PS5, Xbox Series S, X, and Steam. So specifically for the current gen platforms, I guess the demo, not for the last gen systems there. And it's combat demo. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. I legitimately just started downloading it, so I will check it out because I've been very curious about this game. A lot of the trailers and things I've seen does remind me of that time with like the late PS3 era, right? So I'll be getting the game definitely, but why not check out some of the demo? And some of the clips people are posting up on Twitter looks off the wall ridiculous. They're shooting like these beams out of the swords and stuff. So again, definitely worth checking out for the demo that's out now. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a potential game that could be getting revealed here pretty soon, that at Pokemon Day. And what we would expect here is what we've seen the past 3 out of the 4 years, and that is some sort of Pokemon Direct or Pokemon Presents, basically just a showcase detailing several projects from the Pokemon Company, of course in collaboration with Nintendo. And these events obviously are there to celebrate Pokemon, that being February 27th for the specific day, but they'll also announce random projects like Pokemon Smile, has Pokemon Sleep and a bunch of other things. But also you'll get spin-off titles here, and that's kind of what we're honing in on today. So there is this website that's launched, and you can see this tweet that was posted up. This is from the Pokemon Together website. It's just recently launched, and we can see here Felipe says Spike Chunsoft plus Pokemon with the mystery dungeon. And if you look in the kind of the code here on the website, you can see the copyright text, and people were mentioning it goes back to like 1993. And what we're looking at now with Spike Chunsoft would be something in the mystery dungeon line, most likely. Remember, they did the remake for Mystery Dungeon DX recently, over the last couple of years, and I was pretty critical on that game. I kind of felt that the remake itself boxed them into what was a very rudimentary title from years and years and years ago, and they're bringing it up to 2020 with the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX. So I'd like to think that in this case, if it's a brand new game being released with Nintendo, Pokemon Company, and Spike Chunsoft, that it would be a game that maybe feels like it fits in a bit better for this time period. Of course, we'll take advantage of different advancements and other things that the Switch would be able to provide over the Game Boy Advanced. But I am interested if they have a new Mystery Dungeon, that it is a brand new one and not another remake or something. I talked back and forth with Jordan about this. He really liked the game, and I didn't. But I am willing to give the series another shot if they do show up here for Pokemon Day. And I've also been curious what else they would show during the event. I've mentioned that it makes sense, I think anyway, to get the ball rolling with Nintendo Switch Online and some sort of offering of Pokemon games, whether it's legitimately just Red and Blue. We're just going to throw those on the Game Boy, and then maybe we have one Game Boy Advance Pokemon game, although you feel like you'd want them to come in pairs so you can trade back and forth and collect all the different Pokemon, but it's Nintendo, it's Pokemon, they do some weird things. Otherwise, downloadable content, I assume, for Scarlet and Violet, and then from there, who knows? They've shown off some weird things. Maybe we can get an update on Pokemon Sleep, but keep an eye out in the next 10 days or so for an announcement, as we are honing in on February 27th. Next up, let's talk about PlayStation VR 2, as a bunch of reviews went live yesterday after the embargo lifted. I also noticed that Sony charged me, and it appears they are preparing the shipment for PSVR 2, so I should have that coming in next week. It's exciting stuff, because as I was going through a lot of these reviews, it kind of turned out the way I was mostly expecting. And for example, IGN gave it a 9, so that's a pretty good starting point there for PSVR 2. But then also going over to Metacritic, they did an entire review roundup to make it a bit easier to go through all of them at a glance, which we can see some of them here with the extremely positive reviews. We have 90s, 90s, 98s, 90s, and then we do go all the way down with the lowest one that I could find was a mixed review from Game Informer with a 50. But as I was going through these reviews, they do share a lot of common thoughts, and most of it is, it's a really cool piece of technology, but they need more in terms of software to really showcase what it can do. From what I could tell though, many of them weren't able to play Gran Turismo 7 or Resident Evil Village, and to me, those are going to be two of the best experiences to show off the headset, next to Horizon Call of the Mountain, which they did have access to. So that's sort of the titles I'm going to be trying right away: Horizon Call of the Mountain, Resident Evil Village, and then Gran Turismo 7. Because from what we've seen, everyone was floored by the technology with that price point. And I know $550 seems weird because it's more than the PlayStation 5. I mean, if you look at the digital one, it's $150 more. But then if you look around at the market that it's competing with, it's actually priced pretty well. In some cases, it's actually on the cheaper end. And if you're someone who has been using the original PlayStation VR even to this day, or just in the past, and you didn't like it, or maybe it just didn't feel like a great experience overall, it sounds like this is leaps and bounds ahead of that, with much cleaner looking visuals, sharper. It's the first one had a lot of blurriness with the screen door effect. All of that is basically gone. The haptic feedback is really, really cool, and see how they use that once again in some of these experiences going forward. To me though, the biggest thing is they gotta sell it on software, and I need to see Sony really commit to this thing, because I saw what happened with PlayStation VR. They just kind of lost interest. It sort of felt like the Vita, where they were like, this isn't doing as well as we were hoping it would. Let's let's move on and just push all resources to the PlayStation 4. I guess the one benefit here is the PSVR 2 is tethered to the PS5, so maybe we'll see more and more developers come in and work to create interesting experiences and games for it. But to me, it still has to start first and foremost with Sony. So here's hoping they have some plans, whether it's new intellectual properties or ones they can tap from the past and bring up and have a big aha moment with PlayStation VR 2. But I guess we'll see going forward. At the very least, I will have it next week, hopefully, and be able to talk about it a bit more on the podcast that weekend. Next up, let's talk about the ballooning video game budgets that we keep hearing about, and we tend to hear about it more if a game doesn't do well. Like, they show up with investors and they're talking about, it cost us $150, $160, $170 million to make the Callisto Protocol, and it didn't do well at all. Well, we have the latest example, and that's Saints Row. Now, I want you to stop and think about this. How much do you think Saints Row cost to make? Remember, they showed it off. There's a lot of backlash based on the characters and the weird tone shift that they had, and then comes out, the game wasn't very good, wasn't well received critically, it was buggy, glitchy, is not a great experience, all right? Was it 20 million? Was it 30 million? 50 million? You have to double that because apparently this game, Saints Row, cost $100 million to make, and I saw the immediate reactions online. It's like, where? Well, we can see this posted up over on Twitter. This was from Embracer saying, big loss for Embracer Group, PC console segment due to the high depreciation associated with underperforming releases earlier in the year, particularly Saints Row, which cost more than $100 million. Total completed games value for July to September was, $1,671 million, which comes out to roughly $160 million or so. And Saints Row is like the big notable game from that time period. So people are basically using deductive reasoning and then also apparently some behind the scenes info to come up with that $100 million number with some of the financials that are now public, which is absolutely mind blowing that Saints Row cost $100 million. But we've been having this conversation more and more, especially as we're seeing like the $60 to $70 shift. We're seeing more and more talk around these development cycles taking longer and longer and longer, and the amount of money it costs just to get these expectations met that we're seeing on the marketplace currently, with these games getting crazier and crazier in terms of visuals and scope. $100 million for Saints Row. Maybe it's really not that hard to believe, although I did play all the way through it, and I gotta tell you, I'm having a hard time believing it. The only thing I can think of that's not really made clear is how much of that money that's being discussed was for development and marketing. Now, we've heard that marketing and development can almost equal, so could have been split down the middle, 50 million development, 50 million for budget. But if this is really $100 million to create Saints Row, Embracer, they got to get things figured out here going forward, because they keep talking about how they have like 30 some odd AAA big budget games in development currently. And if this is the output they're getting from games that cost $100 million, maybe they need to go back and reevaluate things, because it feels like they're losing money or wasting money at different points in time that they probably don't have to. But I am curious of the future of Saints Row, if there is one anymore, because hearing that number versus the sales and reception, it does make you think that maybe they would step away from Saints Row for a long time, and we'll see if they ever go back to it. But yeah, there you have it. Saints Row, $100 million to make. Can you believe that? And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts in Japan. These giving us a look at hardware and software sales each and every week. And we've been talking about these charts the last couple of weeks more so because it's interesting to see the PlayStation 5 just take over completely in Japan. Now, we can take a look here at the software for this previous week, starting with the top 10. Hogwarts Legacy did come in 67,196. Saw some reports and people mentioning this, that they weren't able to find any more copies in Japan for Hogwarts Legacy physically, because that's what this chart would be tracking here. So there's a lot of speculation that the digital side of things would be much larger than even the physical sales here. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, though, at 2. Then we have Splatoon 3, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Minecraft, Fire Emblem Engage, Nintendo Switch Sports, Mario Party Superstars, Gran Turismo 7, and then Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So you can see the Switch still took up 8 of the top 10 spots on the charts. But if we move over to hardware, take a look at this. The PS5 At the top, 93,574. Seems to be settling in to like that 90,000 unit range the past couple of weeks now. As you can see, the previous week, almost the same exact amount, just at 93,000. That pushes the year to date over 420,000 now, so it's actually not too far behind the Switch year to date. And we know that Sony made a big push with Jim Ryan even apologizing to the Japanese market around the overall stock availability, and they were going to work to push that back up to where we are now, and it seems like they're coming through. Nintendo Switch, though, 55,025 units. The Xbox Series, 3,935, and then the PS4, 1,115. Oh, wait, look, they did find 91 3DSs in the back. And while I'm still curious to hear the number overall for Hogwarts Legacy whenever WB gets around to it, as we see it once again topping a sales chart, the hardware is certainly what's going to be drawing a lot of the conversation here, as it does seem that the PlayStation 5 has just found its footing and is just going forward, as long as their stock, going to be the #1 selling system there in Japan, which is something that the Switch has been doing for years now. It was a big deal when Sony randomly just happened to top the sales chart, and that seemed to be because there just weren't any Switches that week. Here, though, it appears, again, people walking around taking pictures of different stores with the stock. Dr. Cirque and Toto, for example, had a thread on Twitter showing stock for not only the PlayStation 5, but also the Switch. So seems like they're both available. Just right now, there's market saturation, I would assume, for the Switch and not at all for the PlayStation. So the charts and the sales, all of that makes sense. I'll be more curious when we get some of these bigger games out there for Nintendo with something like Zelda. Could that work to really push up Switch sales, or are we just to a point where everyone has a Switch, so they're just gonna buy the game? As for Sony, as they continue to roll along here, I'll be curious when things like Final Fantasy come out, because I'm sure that'll be pretty big, along with something like Spider-Man 2. But yeah, it seems right now in Japan, Sony, as they're kind of doing across the world now, taking that #1 spot with the PS5. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, would you rather a game company focus on many smaller budget games that come out more often, or just do one big expensive game that might take the entire console generation to make? 57% would rather have several smaller budget games, and 43% say one big expensive game. And as I've mentioned, we've seen these development cycles take 6 or 7 years, which is a console generation. Like, can you imagine that? Where we talked about Jason Schreier and how he put out a tweet saying, if you're a big budget AAA studio, big game coming out, and you're starting right now, you're going to start thinking about targeting the PlayStation 6 and whatever next Xbox is out, because your window is 6 or 7 years. To me personally, if I get a game that's 10 hours long, but it's a really good experience and it takes that studio 2 to 3 years to make, I'm fine with that. In fact, the Dead Space remake apparently took less than 3 years to make it, and I felt like I got a lot out of that game. I mean, yeah, you kind of play through it multiple times and all that, but it's a really fun and really good experience. So I guess the best answer is a mix of both, but for one studio, it kind of sounds like you pick one or the other. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Poro saying, Legend Dragoon was an in-house JRPG developed by Sony, not Square Enix. Yeah, I had to go back because I saw the comments. I was like, what did I say? I go back and look, and I mentioned that Legend Dragoon was made by Square. I was like, why did I say that? Because for the last several months now, I've been saying Sony should have Legend Dragoon on PlayStation Plus because they own the game. There's no licensing to figure out or any of that. I mean, Legend Dragoon was made by Japan Studios. Shuhei Yoshida produced the thing. I guess back then, now that I'm thinking about it, was that like 99, 2000 or so? It was a game that did kind of blur in or blend in really well, blurred the lines between that and Final Fantasy. So I guess there were a lot of people who saw that as like the answer to Final Fantasy from Sony. And I'm sure some thought even at the time that it was a Square game, because Square was becoming known for some of these big time JRPGs like Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. But yeah, good correction there. Again, not really sure why that got out there when I was going over the different things. But yes, it was done by Sony, in-house, published by Sony. They own the rights completely. So that's why it's a little strange that just now is going to PlayStation Plus. That might have been a really good launch title. Nonetheless, though, exciting to check it out again, because it has been a long time since I've even played Legend of Dragoon. I think the last time might have been on a PS2 with my PS1 copy that I still have. So it'll be kind of fun to go back through, and I am curious to see what the trophy list is. The only thing with this is, I remember it being a very long game, like 40 some odd hours, so maybe I'll go into it, see how it looks visually, and play it from time to time. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Pokemon Day and the potential for a new mystery dungeon game getting revealed. Do you think we will have a Pokemon Presents or Pokemon Direct, and what do you think could be announced there? And then also, what about the PlayStation VR 2? Are you picking one of those up next week? And then Saints Row cost $100 million. Is that as shocking to you as it was to me? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.